ConnorTsunami here and welcome back to Japan. First of all, I want to tell you guys that there are going to be 2 episodes of Japan 101 this week. I've already announced this on my Facebook and Twitter, but for those of you who don't follow me on either of those social networks, now I'm telling you. There's going to be one today and there's going to be one tomorrow. Today's episode is going to be on exchange programs and programs you can use to try and get to Japan. Now, I sort of covered this a little bit last week with the visas, but because I didn't cover it in very much detail, this week's going to be in a lot more detail over last week. Last week was more introducing the kinds of visas you can take to try and get to Japan. This week's going to be a little bit more specifically the programs you can use to try and get those visas. I'm only intimately aware of the processes of a few of them, so first of all I'll go through the processes of the ones that I'm not so super aware of myself personally, and I'll go through the ones that I am more aware of afterwards. Because I'm not so super aware of what exactly the processes are, I did a little bit of research, got a little bit of information from other places about the ones that I'm not so super sure of, so some of my information may not be 100% correct, but for the most part I'm fairly certain it's okay. So feel free, if you have any additional information you want to add on, to comment below and let me know any information that I missed out. In my last video I'd already introduced most of these, so I'm going to keep the introductions for these short, but I will reintroduce them for you for those of you who didn't watch the last video. First of all, we'll start off with the JET program. Due to my lack of knowledge on JET, I asked someone who's an ex-JET ALT for a little bit of information on the process of how to apply. This person was from Australia, so of course the process is only going to apply for those in Australia, but the process is exactly the same in other countries. The only difference is the dates, which only vary very slightly. So, in her very words, I'm going to read this from my phone, so allow me to read this from my phone for you guys because I have it written down here. The application process for JET starts in September, and you have to have your application by the end of November, start of December. You have to fill in a long application form, around 10 pages, get 2 references from superiors at work or uni professors, uni transcripts, write a 1 to 2 page statement of purpose, why you want to be a JET ALT, etc. and then photocopy everything 3 times. This way, if you get an interview, you find out in mid-January if you get an interview, the 3 interviewers have your application in front of them. The interviews are held in February. You find out if you get in early to mid-April. You then find out where you'll be going mid to late May. Then you're in contact with your predecessor mid to late June, so you pretty much get in contact with the person who was there before you, basically, at the same school. During June, you'll have pre-departure workshops at the embassy in Brisbane, or that's her case. In others' cases, it may be in different, states or different cities. And then at the end of July, you get a plane with the other Aussie jets, which will be other countries, of course, for other people, and have a 3-day orientation in Tokyo. Then you're off to your new home. Okay, so that's everything from her that she gave me that I asked for, on the process of how you apply and get through the whole application process. So I hope that was sort of a little more insight than I could have given you, because I had no idea until I'd asked her. As for the accommodation, I actually assumed that you'd probably get teachers' accommodation supplied to you by either the school or by the program, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I am fairly sure though that you do get supplied accommodation, you don't have to look for it yourself. Just a quick note though, that I've heard from a few friends, I actually think I mentioned this in my last video, that I've heard that the JET program does not treat their ALTs very, very well. I may be wrong on this, so if anyone's gone through the JET program and has anything they'd like to say on the counter of that, feel free, but this is just what I've heard from a couple of other ALTs and what I've seen from the program treating them from the schools I've been to where there have been ALTs from JET. So if you're thinking of joining the JET program, be aware of that. Now I'll give you a really, really quick overview of the requirements that you need in order to apply. Because once again, I have absolutely no idea personally, I'm going to take this directly from the website and I will just recite everything as it's worded on the website for you. Number 1, be interested in Japan and be willing to deepen the knowledge and appreciation of Japan after their arrival. Make effort to study and continue studying Japanese language prior to and after arriving in Japan. Be motivated to participate in and initiate international exchange activities in the local community. 2, both mentally and physically healthy. 3, have the ability to adapt to living and working in Japan. 4, both ALT and CIR applicants must hold at least a bachelor's degree or obtain such qualifications by a designated arrival date. So basically, you have to have a 4-year degree before you arrive. Be a national, not just permanent resident of the country where the recruitment and selection procedures take place by the time they submit their applicant form. So basically, you need to be a citizen wherever you're living, wherever you're applying from. That's pretty much it. You can't be a permanent resident, you have to be a citizen. If you have dual residency though, in Japan, you have to renounce your Japanese residency. However, if you're a Japanese citizen with dual citizenship, you have to renounce your Japanese citizenship before you can apply. However, if you're from any other country with 2 citizenships, then you are required to only apply as one of them. Okay, number 6, be adept in contemporary standard pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation in the designated language. Example, English for those applying from English-speaking countries. So basically, you need to be good at the language you're trying to teach. Okay, you can't be really bad at the English if you're, trying to teach the English. Okay, number 7. Not have participated in JET program since the 2010-2011 JET program year, inclusive of April 2010 arrivals, or for more than 5 years in total. So this is kind of like for those of you who have already done JET, trying to apply again, so most people don't need to worry about this. 8. Not have declined a position in the JET program after receiving notification of placement in the last JET program year. So basically, if you want to apply this year, you can't have denied it last year if you actually got offered a place. So basically, don't apply with the intent of not accepting. Okay, number 9, not have lived in Japan for 6 or more years in total since 2003. 10, have a desire to proactively maintain relations with Japan even after completion of the program. Now, I don't see how they're going to monitor this, but you know, this is just sort of a recommendation thing, I guess. Okay, number 11. Concerning the entry into Japan for participation in the JET program, agree to reside in Japan under the status of residence stipulated in da-da-da-da-da. So basically, you have to come there on their terms. Obey all Japanese laws. This is obvious. And finally, number 13, applicants with a suspended jail term must have finished their period of probation by the time they submit their application form. So they're even willing to take in people who've been to prison. Lucky you guys. So those are all the basic rules. There are a couple of additional ones that only matter, like whether you're being an ALT or a CIR or whatever CIR is. But those are basically the most important ones that you need to take note of. Okay, so with all that in mind, let's move on to Rotary. Rotary Youth Exchange is a decent exchange program based on a preference sort of system. So you basically sort of choose ballpark what kind of countries you want to go to. I think you get a list of 1 to 3 of your preferences, and they may or may not give you one of your preferences depending on what's available at the time. A friend of mine who took Rotary Youth Exchange actually didn't include Japan on his application, but he got sent to Japan anyway because that's what he got offered, so he came like that. You list your preferences of countries, and basically you may or may not get them. So you sort of just have to deal with what you get given, or you can turn down what you get given and you just don't get to come on that exchange route. After following a standard process of pretty much acquiring all the necessary paperwork and sending it in, you pretty much have to go to an interview, you get interviewed to sort of see what sort of a person you're like and whether or not you're eligible for the program. And after that, you'll get a notification of acceptance, and basically that's when you simply have to have your money together to go, and that's done deal. So Rotaries really doesn't seem like that difficult to get into. However, there are a few limitations you have to deal with like sort of the preference-based system and not 100% time going to be definitely able to get into Japan. So it's the option if you want to try get into Japan, but are not expecting to get into Japan, but are still sort of okay with traveling to anywhere else at the same time. Catch here is that it's only offered to 13 to 19-year-old students because you get sent to high schools no matter what country you get sent to. So if you're an adult and you're expecting to try and go on Rotary, don't bother. What Rotary also does is it gives its students a small allowance every month of I think about $200 or something along those lines, and require a report from each of their students every month. This way they can keep track of the students' progress and make sure that they're progressing okay through school and with their education and such on their program. Personally, I think this is a really good way of making sure the students are not wasting their time in whatever country they're in, and it helps them sort of reevaluate themselves as they go along their learning experience. Students stay with host families but do not require board because basically the way that host families are found is through the program itself. The program actually has a bunch of families in the country that they're sending the students to that apply as volunteer host families, so to sort of deepen international understanding. At least to my understanding, that's sort of how things go. These host families change periodically, and you don't really have any control over who you stay with. So you sort of just got to deal with whoever you get. Students are responsible for a few things, however, and I'm going to list those right now, once again, directly from the website. Rotary Youth Exchange students are responsible for the round-trip airfare, insurance, travel documents such as passport and visas, spending money, additional travel, and tour fees. So basically, you have to pay for a lot of it yourself, but trust me, in the end, it seems like it's very well worth it. So if you're thinking of going on an exchange, you know, when you're 13 or 19, if you're still in high school, whatever, it's a good idea to try and apply for Rotary. So I highly recommend it for you over the next one that we're going to move on to, which is JFIE. I just mentioned the name JFIE, so I'll actually broaden that a little bit by saying we're going to move on to programs I've dealt with and know a little bit more about myself. First of all, JFIE is a little bit limited in the ways you can apply. JFIE requires an intermediary company before you can sort of apply for their program. So in Australia, that was AIIU. And in other countries, there are other programs, but I don't know about them very well, and I know about AIIU. And the application process goes something like this. You have to get certain documents from your high school, whatever, because once again, it's a high school exchange basically where you go to a high school in Japan, and is only available to the ages of 13 to 19. Essentially, once you've got your documents from school, you've got your personal documents such as a scanned passport, you've got a scan of other documents like ones that you need for your application forms and such. You send those in, they'll send you back an email eventually saying whether or not you've got an interview, call you into an interview wherever the interviews are being held. Then once you've taken the interview, they'll notify you whether or not that you've gotten into the exchange program. After that, you have to go back to that city later on for an orientation, basically a debriefing on what sort of things you can expect and a few words from the returned students from the previous year. After that, you pretty much have to wait out your time until it's time to go. You fly over to wherever the main places that you would meet up with other students. All the students then fly together to Japan, and then once you arrive in Tokyo, you have a 3-day orientation. After that, you all go your separate ways and get sent off to your host families. And it's similar to Rotary, how you have to stay with host families and you don't get to choose your host families. However, rather than the organization doing anything to help you with trying to choose your host families, the school does it for them. And you also receive no allowance whatsoever like you do with Rotary. So basically there aren't all that many perks as to going with JFIE at all. JFIE has two sort of lengths that you can go on. You can go on for 3 months or you can go on for 10 months. This is for people who just want to sort of try Japan, or those who want to really like go all out and see if they can give Japanese lifestyle a try. Although the difference in cost is really not that big, so quite honestly I would more so recommend the 10 months over the 3 months. Although 10 months away from your family and friends is a very difficult thing to try and do, so unless you're really dedicated to the cause, don't try it. You'll be visited by a counselor every month to try and get a report out of you on how things are going at school, how your Japanese level's going, and all that sort of thing. However, personally, this becomes more of a pain, in my opinion, than it does any help. Because in the end, the counselor doesn't actually really help whenever you do have issues. They refer it to their superiors, and that's pretty much trouble for you. I actually had an issue myself with this where that I was uncomfortable with one of my host families and I reported it to my counselor. And in return, she reported it to her superior, and the superior then came back to me saying that I was not allowed to complain about my host family, even though I was just having difficulties with them because they were very outgoing and I wasn't very good with noise and outgoing people, so I was asking them if there was anything they could do about it, maybe switch me out early or whatever. So basically I got in trouble for that and nearly kicked out of Japan, but that's another story and we can move on from there now. Basically with JFI, just be very, very careful if you're planning on applying with them, because while they are the only definite route that I'm aware of to getting to Japan if you're a teenager, they are very difficult to deal with, especially if you need help. They're not reliable at all, and I would not recommend them if you have other options. And finally, we're moving on to the one that I feel is actually the best program of them all at the moment, Gogo Nihon. Now, there are a couple of people on YouTube who I've seen who disagree with Gogo Nihon simply because they don't give enough help, but after this I'm going to explain all the reasons why they are actually really quite good and they help you enormously with trying to get into Japan. I leave a link to their website in the description below so you guys can check out all the options they have for if you want to come to Japan through their program. Now basically, the application process is really, really simple. You go to their website, you go choose a location you want to live at. Now, this is all down to personal preference because all the schools do the same thing, you learn Japanese. I chose Yokohama because I wanted to live close to Tokyo. I like the proximity, I like being able to go there frequently. However, I'm not good with the fact that it's nearly double the living expenses as well as the noise and busyness of the city, so I chose Yokohama instead. A lot of people might choose this option, and I highly recommend considering Yokohama if you're not thinking like you want to be in the middle of Tokyo where it's really, really busy and stuff. Like, it's fun as an adventure for maybe one day, but living there is really, really tough. So on the website, you're able to examine school options on every one of these locations. You have to choose the one that's best for you personally based on location and pricing and the amount of time that you can study. After that, there should be a button on that page that allows you to inquire with Gogo Nihon about the school. You can basically ask questions about it, or you can say you want to apply. And if you ask that you want to apply, then they'll send you a link to an application form online. They'll also ask for a number of other documents alongside of it that you can scan and send in, like your passport and birth certificate and other things like that. So once you've sent all that in, the application process will begin and they will let you know whether or not you've been accepted into the program. Once you have to book your tickets to Japan. Now the reason for this is because they require them if you're going to apply for accommodation through them, which they can also help you with, but you need to get in really early for that, otherwise you will miss out. Accommodation with them is not very broad. They don't have many options for you, so if you plan on getting accommodation help, then you need to apply for that really early, and that means getting your tickets really early too. You pay your school fees after that, you receive your visa documents, you send the visa documents back out to the MC, and then you receive your final visa, your visa document that you take to the airport with you when you come to Japan, pretty close to your flight date. Then you fly over to Japan, and that's pretty much done deal. Now the thing is that people have a lot of gripes with Gogo Nihon because they don't help you past that. The thing is that it's not really an exchange agency so much as a free service that allows you to get a visa to Japan. So people mistake them thinking that they should help you with things like your Zaidu card, your foreigner's card when you get here, or trying to change addresses and such, but that's not their job. People need to understand that's not what they're supposed to do, that's not what they're here for. They're here to help you get a visa and get into Japan and come to school and learn. But they're not here to help you with all your personal issues, and you sort of need to work those out yourself. So Gogo Nihon is a great service to use. However, I recommend that you sort of know what you're doing before you try and apply through them, to make sure that if you're going to go through Gogo Nihon, you're ready to take responsibility for your own actions and yourself when you get here. Okay, so that's everything I have for you today, guys. I hope the information I had for you helped a bit. If you have any more questions I didn't manage to answer, or you want to see on another Japan 101, be sure to leave them in the comment section below, because I either answer all the comments that have questions in them, or if there's anything that you want to see on Japan 101, I'm sure to put them on the list of things to video. As always, if you enjoyed, a like is always appreciated. If you want to see more Japan 101 every week, be sure to hit that subscribe button. One more time to remind you guys, tomorrow there's going to be another episode of Japan 101, so be sure to come and see that too. But that's all I have for you today, guys. So, this is ConnorTsunami, signing out.